Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Q News. Welcome to the first ever episode of Think Tank. I'm Henny Saif. And on this show, we speak with prominent officials, a body of experts and analysts to try and get to the bottom of the world's foremost issues. We start today's show in Lebanon, a long-troubled nation that now finds itself at a perilous crossroads. Israel has launched a ground incursion in southern Lebanon, escalating nearly a year of conflict into yet another foreign territory. Lebanon was already facing a catastrophic economic crisis, but it must now deal with the devastation of war. Once inflation soars and the currency plummets, many now wonder how this nation will survive. Israel, too, is feeling the weight of its own actions. The nation's economy has now received a credit downgrade by Moody's, a stark reminder of the consequences of fighting a two-front war.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين.
وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
The economic damage of war has an acute effect on people's lives. Unemployment, rising prices and extreme poverty are just some of the challenges faced by conflict-stricken communities. The following report highlights the crushing economic impact of the Israeli ground invasion on southern Lebanon.
In a dramatic move, Moody's cut Israel's credit rating by 2 levels for the second time this year. It warned about the long-time economic fallout of the ongoing war and described an environment of uncertainty detrimental to investments and economic growth. A lower credit rating made it more expensive for the Israeli government to raise debt, as the risk of repayment rises when it needs billions of shekels to fund the cost of the ongoing war started in Gaza and now in South Lebanon. On the other hand, Lebanon, which has already been suffering from a stifling economic crisis since 2019, faces additional pressures with the outbreak of war and the destruction of infrastructure. The Lebanese pound has collapsed, losing over 90% of its purchasing power, while inflation rates have risen sharply. The Central Bank of Lebanon's reserve have declined significantly. The banking sector's losses have exceeded $70 billion, and the GDP has fallen by 50%, leaving 80% of Lebanon's population below the poverty line. The latest August data indicate that the war has prevented farmers from cultivating 17 million square meters of agricultural land. The industrial sector is also expected to decline by more than 50%, equivalent to losses estimated at around $2 billion. The disruption of ports will exacerbate the living crisis, leading to additional losses estimated at $1.5 billion.
In a region gripped by turmoil, Lebanon stands on the brink of catastrophe, with the economy in freefall. The once stable Lebanese pound has collapsed and inflation is soaring. Israel is also facing crisis, burdened by a credit downgrade and mounting frustrations among businesses and reservists. Today, we'll delve into these intertwined stories with the Lebanese Minister of Economy and Trade, Amin Salem, from Beirut. So, welcome to the program. First off now, can you provide an overview of the current economic situation in Lebanon?
Well, first and foremost, I'm happy to be with you today.
It's a pleasure.
Lebanon is under total siege today. Beirut is under fire, and it's really a nation in crisis mode. The city has been under fire for a week now. We could feel it all over Beirut. We have about 1 million people that are displaced now, mostly concentrated between Beirut, the capital, and Mount Lebanon area. But we have over 700 today shelters that are hosting hundreds of thousands of people. Despite that, the time frame that the displacement has happened in has been probably one of the first of its kind in history, because it has happened in less than a week, where you have almost 1 million displaced people. The situation is dire. If we're looking at the economy, things are very challenging on every front. Definitely the areas including the south, the Bekaa, the southern part of Beirut, all those have witnessed major losses, major destruction in institutions, in manufacturing facilities, people's jobs, people's homes, and that has direct negative impact on GDP, on growth. We're talking short to medium term and long term effects. So I don't know really where we can start, but it's very challenging. It's very dangerous, the escalation, and the people of Lebanon are paying a very high price.
Mm-hmm. Your Excellency, can you explain now the impact of the ongoing conflict on the tourism and service sectors, which are crucial for Lebanon's economy? Some would say are the cornerstones for the Lebanese economy.
Well, certainly. I mean, everybody knows that the Lebanese economy, particularly the past 4 years after the collapse, has focused a lot on few sectors that were still pumping cash or hard currency, most specifically the dollar, into the economy. And those were tourism, agricultural products, or food and beverage industries, and services. So due to the lack of safety and security, due to the escalation of war, we have lost the entire tourism season of 2024. That includes the summer season. We're diving now into the winter season with uncertainty as to how the escalation is going to happen, what is going to happen. So those are sectors that used to inject into the economy almost $10 billion between the tourism season and the agricultural sector. The agricultural sector has been hit hard because most of the agricultural lands in the south and Bekaa, which constitute a big portion of our national agricultural farmlands, have been totally contaminated, totally burnt out, and trees that are in the hundreds of thousands have been destroyed. The tourism season completely, almost 85–90% of the tourism season have been completely shut off over 2 months ago, making the economy lose billions of dollars.
Mm-hmm. Well, so what about the central bank? What role does it play in stabilizing the economy during this conflict? And what sort of challenges does it face?
Well, it's a joint project actually between Ministry of Economy and Trade, the Central Bank, and Ministry of Finance. We have been working relentlessly together for the past year since the war started. I mean, we've been working on an emergency basis for the past 3 years, particularly to stabilize the currency rate compared to the dollar rate. So despite the war that has been ongoing in Gaza and Lebanon, most recently for almost a year, we managed up till now to kind of keep the exchange rate under control. However, with no growth, with a negative GDP due to all what we have mentioned earlier, there is and for further escalation, in case of further escalation, which we're hoping would not be the case, we will be having a very challenging time altogether. The central bank, despite what you do, at the end of the day, you need stability. You need employment. You need a turnaround in the economy. And that is not happening now due to the war. So our biggest fear, is that if things go beyond where we are today, if this war extends longer, we might not be able to contain or control the exchange rate. And that is a big concern that we are having as a government and as a Ministry of Economy.
Mm-hmm. Your Excellency, speaking of the government now, what specific measures are the government implementing to address the immediate economic impacts of the ongoing conflict?
So now our biggest challenge is the displacement. We have a major crisis now, as I mentioned, with over 1 million people, and those are accurate numbers, that have left their homes, left their villages, left their cities, and moved towards the city of Beirut and other parts of Lebanon where there is more safety and security. The government now is working on a three-pillar track, which is first making sure that everybody gets a shelter, everybody has a roof to sleep under with good conditions. Number two is food security, to make sure that we have all the needs and necessities for all the food needs and nutritious needs for people to be able to have their 3 meals a day at least. And then we have the medical aid and medicine that are all available at this point. We have a lot of the Arab countries and a number of European countries that have opened air bridges now and are sending airplanes to Lebanon with aid. We can see a lot coming from the Arab countries in the past week, particularly Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the Kingdom of Jordan, Egypt, and a number of other countries. So there is big reliance today on the international community to support Lebanon, because the capacity that the government has is decent, still acceptable, but cannot last for a long war. We can do few more months based on the government's ability, but without foreign assistance and without foreign aid, we will be in a very difficult place, specifically that we know that those displaced people, even if the war ends tomorrow, even if there's a ceasefire tomorrow, they will not be, back at their homes before at least a year, given the circumstances in the south.
Mm-hmm. Your Excellency, now we're almost a year into the war, and you spoke about the current implications of the conflict, but can you elaborate on the expected long-term consequences of this war on Lebanon's GDP based on the current projections?
Well, the biggest concern is that, as we said, the economy itself, the entire infrastructure of the financial system and economic system in Lebanon, before the war started a year ago, was in total collapse. We were, as you know, working with the IMF on a potential deal backed up by governmental reforms, economic reforms, banking and financial restructuring. Not all of that has happened. 75% of that has not happened due to the political tensions and turmoil in Lebanon. And that is very unfortunate, because we did all our best to try to accomplish an IMF deal. We were talking about growth in 2023. We were hoping that we would have 2.5% to 3% growth in 2023. See any growth. On the contrary, we went back. GDP has been terribly affected. And now, again, as I said, with massive unemployment, with destruction of major areas that are considered agricultural, farmlands, and industrial, that will be a big hit on the long term for the Lebanese economy. That is why I emphasize on the efforts that are being done between Lebanon, the Arab states, and the United States on an immediate ceasefire, because the economy definitely cannot handle an extension of this war. If the longer this war goes, the deeper the economy dives, the more we go into the unknown as far as the GDP, growth, anything you can imagine.
So now you've mentioned about 1 million Lebanese citizens have been displaced. Now, how is the government planning to address the needs of the displaced population?
So we had today, I mean, we're having on a daily basis, the emergency ministerial committee is meeting with the donor countries, is meeting with the United Nations, is meeting with diplomatic missions in Lebanon to focus now on providing aid. And we have received, I would say, very, very good response so far. We are hoping that we would see more contribution, particularly from the European Union to this crisis in Lebanon, specifically that everybody knows that Lebanon has not yet lifted itself from a 12-year war in Syria that already placed in Lebanon over 2 million Syrian refugees, not to mention the Palestinian refugees that we've had here for decades since the conflict between Israel and Palestine started. So we're talking about a serious crisis. We're talking about, as I mentioned when we started this interview, we are a nation in serious crisis. Today, we need all the support that we can get from the international community, because it's not just that we need to save now and provide for the displaced people. We are still dealing with millions of refugees from Syria, from Palestine, from other places. And no country in the size of Lebanon that was witnessing an economic meltdown could really tolerate all that pressure. It's very, very, very difficult.
So you've mentioned earlier the effect of the crisis it has on food and agro production. Now, what sort of efforts are being made to support the farmers and the agricultural sector in general during this crisis?
Well, I mean, there's not much that the government can do, particularly in the areas that have been completely contaminated and bombed using the phosphorus bombs that Israel has been using, because those kinds of bombs basically contaminate all the farmland. They kill everything. They kill everything that has life. And those areas, we're talking about massive, massive areas of lands. They are all need rehabilitation. They need years of work to bring them back to life, to be able to farm them again, to be able to harvest them again. And that is a long process. It will cost a lot of money and it will take a lot of time. So now the reliance will be shifting more from the Bekaa and the south into the agricultural sector and to the farmers of the north of Lebanon, which as well are not entirely in the safe zone. We have seen some escalation that has reached certain areas within the north part of Lebanon or Mount Lebanon. Very few, but it creates a big concern on the longer term if this war is to escalate. So the agricultural sector and the farmers in Lebanon are going to face a long time for healing and for getting back on track.
Mm-hmm. Now, one last quick question, Your Excellency. Speaking of assistance, what kind of aid has Lebanon received so far, and from whom, and what more does Lebanon need to confront the current crisis?
So first, our needs are very big. I mean, if I tell you we need everything, I mean it. We need everything. I mean, you're talking today, a major crisis of 1 million people that are displaced. They need everything from food, shelter, hygiene. You need all the essentials and necessities for babies, for kids. You need energy. Everybody knows that electricity is a problem in Lebanon. So we're trying to get private generators to light up a lot of the areas where the people are being sheltered. We have a water crisis now, and the WHO is now raising an alarm that if those conditions continue to grow within the next few weeks, we will be having a serious wave of sick people, diseases spreading around, garbage problem in the streets. So if I say, again, as I said, if we say we need everything at this moment. That's why we're sending a big message to the world. Lebanon needs your help. Lebanon needs your support in order to be able to get through this very harsh time. And this the number of displaced people is an unprecedented number in any country in the world that has happened within less than a week.
Your Excellency, thank you very much for being with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the Lebanese Minister of Economy and Trade, Amin Salem. And before we dive deeper into our discussion, let's take a moment to examine the faltering state of the Israeli economy. So stay with us. And for more analysis, we are joined from Ramallah by Mr. Munir Nasiba, an expert on Israeli affairs. Welcome, Mr. Nasiba. Let's start with the big picture. Now, how would you summarize the current state of Israel's economy amidst the ongoing war?
Certainly, the Israeli economy has been affected by the ongoing war on the Gaza Strip. On the one hand, there has been a number of states that have abided by international law and started a certain amount of sanctions against the state of Israel. Some trade has stopped with the state of Israel. And in addition to that, the reality of a state that has been going on in attacking the Gaza Strip and the West Bank and being also under the threat of attacks has also affected the Israeli economy quite significantly.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Nasiba, now it seems that frustration is mounting. How are the Israeli business owners reacting to the government's handling of the situation?
There is a trend of being worried of investing new investments. So the investors in the world are not looking at Israel as a welcoming place for their assets and for their investments. This has also, caused a certain level of uncertainty when it is, as related to the trust in the Israeli economic sector.
Mm-hmm. Well, it is clear that the situation is complex and evolving. I want to extend my thanks to our guest, Mr. Munir Nasiba, an expert on Israeli affairs. Thank you very much, sir. And as the echoes of conflict reverberate through Lebanon, the economic stability of both nations hang by a thread. With economies crumbling and futures uncertain, the question lingers, can hope emerge from the ashes of war? In this fragile moment, resilience may be their only salvation. That brings us to the end of today's episode of Think Tank. Tune in next time as we dissect the latest political, economic and social developments from around the world. Join us for deep analysis that sheds light on today's pressing issues. Stay tuned for more coming up on Q News. I'm Hani Saif. Thank you for joining us.